He thought he was going to be the hero, but nope, the universe had jokes. He got tossed into a game world as Sutra Ignis, the weakest prince of hell, a background character literally scripted to die in Chapter 1. Sounds like game over, right? But here's the glitch. Every time he's hit, he awakens that power instantly. Yeah, his cheat code is basically, get smacked, get stronger. Now he's stealing skills, breaking rules, and climbing straight out of background status. But sooner or later, he'll have to face the real protagonist, the seventh prince himself. That's where everything changes. At the beginning of the story, we are introduced to a young man running frantically through the busy streets, clearly in a rush, and this is our protagonist, Ju In-gong, a name his parents had once given him with dreams of a heroic future. As he bursts into a small game shop, his friends inside greet him warmly, laughing and announcing his arrival, and he quickly explains that although people often teased him for his unusual name throughout his life, he never really minded, because deep down he always dreamed of becoming a hero just like the ones he admired in stories. Without wasting time, Ju In-gong immediately asks if the new game is in stock, and his friend grins, proudly revealing that he set aside a copy just for him. It's none other than the remake of a legendary classic Night Saga, now re-released as Night Saga Re, a game famous for its epic tale of the great conflict between the human and demon races. Players are given the choice to fight as the human hero Rogue Locke, a warrior clad in shining armor who stands for justice, or to take the darker path and side with the demons in their fiery domain, playing as Zephyr Ragnaros, the Demon King's second son. Having cleared the original game more than 10 times, memorizing every character, every event, and even the smallest items hidden in the story, Ju In-gong is especially thrilled about this version because it is the first one to be completely reimagined for advanced full-dive virtual reality. Back at home, he hurries straight into his room and prepares for the long night ahead, carefully holding the small game cartridge as if it were a treasure before sliding it into the sleek console connected to his cutting-edge VR gaming chair. He straps himself in, places the futuristic helmet over his head, and leans back confidently with his arms folded across his chest, a smug smirk on his face, fully prepared to dive into the immersive world of the game. For him, a so-called light session usually means about 8 straight hours of non-stop play, and tonight he's ready for exactly that. The system boots up with streams of radiant digital light swirling around him, engulfing him completely, and his vision fades as he is transported inside. But when he opens his eyes, he finds himself not in the familiar tutorial zone where players normally begin, but instead in a strange sunlit room. Confused, he wonders whether the login worked correctly or if this is some kind of new starting sequence. He glances around in bewilderment until his eyes catch his own reflection, and he is stunned to see a white-haired boy with crimson eyes staring back at him. Before he can even process what's happening, a rough and hoarse voice calls out from the doorway, mocking him and asking if the slacker is still asleep. The curtain is suddenly yanked open by an orc warrior, who scolds him harshly to get up and moving since there's a morning schedule to keep. Ju is taken aback by how breathtakingly real everything looks, from the orc's armor to the rays of sunlight seeping through the curtains, but when he comments aloud about how impressive the graphics are, the orc only stares at him with clear confusion. That's when it hits him. He can actually converse naturally with NPCs, something no game had ever revealed before. Nervously, he asks the orc's name, which immediately makes the warrior uncomfortable. The orc snaps back that he must have forgotten already and tells him his name is Karak before ordering him again to hurry, because everyone is waiting for Prince Sutra. Ju freezes on the spot as the name hits him like a shockwave. Prince Sutra Ignis, the 9th son of the Demon King. Trying to confirm, he instinctively raises his hand to activate the in-game menu, and to his amazement, a holographic status window materializes before his eyes just like in the game. It confirms that his name is indeed Sutra Ignis. But to his frustration, his stats are all 5 points weaker than even an average NPC. He quickly scrolls to his skills, finding only 2 listed, one labeled Conquest and another strangely titled Protagonist Bonus. Staring at the words, he mutters in disbelief, trying to make sense of what this protagonist bonus could possibly mean. Just then, Karak pokes his head back inside the room, impatiently yelling at him again to hurry up. Forced to move, Sutra follows the orc out into the daylight, only to freeze once more at the overwhelming sight of a massive formation of orc soldiers gathered and prepared for battle. Alarmed, he asks Karak why on earth they're on a battlefield so suddenly, but the orc waves off his concern, telling him not to waste time with pointless questions. They're heading out to face the Scarlet Lightning clan. Karak proudly cheers that this is his first real deployment, clearly excited, but Sutra panics, demanding to know what happened to the usual tutorial or beginners area. As the group marches, he quickly pieces things together. They are on their way into conflict against the rebellious Scarlet Lightning Orc tribe, who have already gathered their army in defiance, and his mission, alongside the 7th and 8th princesses of the Demon Kingdom, is to help suppress the rebellion. Looking at their small party, he can't believe they've only brought 10 men to face such a dangerous threat. But Carrick clarifies that this is not a full-scale battle, just a reconnaissance mission meant to test the enemy's strength. Even so, the orc gives him a suspicious look, asking if he ate something strange this morning because he's acting so oddly. Shutra ignores the remark, focusing instead on how to stay alive in this dangerous world. Raising his hand once again, he summons another holographic display, this time revealing a glowing mini-map, which he keeps open to track their movements. As his eyes scan across it, he suddenly notices a faintly marked hidden route, and his heart skips a beat as his eyes widen with intrigue, realizing he may have just stumbled across a secret event hidden within the game itself. Meanwhile, Kara carefully studies a physical map in his hands, frowning as he concludes that their current route will take far too long to reach the enemy. Shutra, however, steps forward with surprising confidence and tells his companion to follow him, boldly claiming that he knows a much faster shortcut. Though skeptical of the young prince's sudden certainty, the orc squad chooses to trust him and marches after him as he leads them off the beaten path and deep into the dense, unfamiliar woods. The shortcut he spoke of soon reveals its true nature, a perilous climb up a steep and treacherous cliff face that pushes their strength to the limit. Shutra, still burdened with his level 1 stamina, struggles desperately with the intense physical effort, his hands aching and his breath ragged, sweat dripping down his face as he drags himself upward. After a grueling climb, the group finally pulls themselves over the ridge and is met with an astonishing sight. A massive ancient stone door embedded into the mountainside, its surface decorated with ornate ring handles and markings that suggest it has remained sealed for countless years. Carrick's jaw drops in awe, demanding to know how the prince even found this place and jokingly asking if he has been hiding the powers of a mage all along, but Shutra brushes it off, still gasping for air. Seeing how exhausted the prince looks, Carrick asks if he's alright, but Shutra laments bitterly about his pathetic level 1 stamina before straightening himself and stepping forward. His eyes are drawn to a glowing sigil etched into the ground in front of the great door, and without hesitation, he places his foot upon it. The moment he does, golden flames erupt from the earth, swirling violently around him in a dazzling spectacle. The sudden surge of energy catches him completely off guard, leaving him frozen in shock as the radiant fire envelops him. A notification flashes before his eyes. He has leveled up. Shutra stares at his interface in disbelief, completely stunned by the impossible fact that he has gained experience simply by walking onto the sigil. His status screen confirms it. Every one of his stats has increased by 2 points, and he has been awarded 2 additional skill points. Slowly, a smile spreads across his face as he realizes the truth of his unique bonus. For the first time, he understands the true meaning of his protagonist bonus, the ability to turn even disaster into opportunity, granting him advantages where others would find none. His thoughts are broken by Carrick tugging at his shoulder, urging him to move quickly before they lose precious time, and the prince nods, his confidence rising now that he knows he is not entirely powerless. He looks at the loyal orcs around him, realizing that he is not alone and that he has trusted allies by his side as they advance into the dark cave beyond the massive door. Inside, jagged icy walls shimmer faintly in the dim light, hinting at both the ancient dangers and forgotten history hidden within. Carrick observes the strange stonework and remarks that the tunnel appears to have been carved by dwarves, an ancient race who once lived in the demonic realm long ago. As they press deeper, the seasoned warrior suddenly stops, his eyes wide with surprise, and moments later the entire squad bursts into excited shouts as they stumble upon a hidden treasure trove, abandoned dwarven weapons glittering in the shadows of the cavern. While the orc soldiers celebrate their discovery, Shutra remains calm, studying the treasure with a calculating expression. He approaches a powerful-looking sword resting on a stone pedestal, but when he tries to lift it, his attempt is blocked by a system message, informing him that his level and attributes are far too low to wield such a weapon. Though frustrated, he quickly decides that the best option is not to leave the items behind, but to store them for later. He points at the weapon and silently thinks the command to add it to his inventory, and just as he expected, the sword vanishes before his eyes and reappears neatly in his inventory slot, confirming that the system mechanics function intuitively. But his small victory is cut short when he glances at his mini-map again. Several red dots suddenly flicker into existence, rapidly closing in on their position. His heart sinks as he realizes that these marks represent approaching enemies, and he immediately shouts for everyone to retreat. Yet before the orcs can even react, a strange glowing red crystal materializes on the ground between two soldiers, pulsing with ominous energy. Cracks begin to spread across its surface, and then, with a violent blast, it explodes outward, unleashing a wave of pink energy that hurls the soldiers off their feet. As the smoke clears, a figure steps forward, a red-skinned warrior radiating menace, followed by his hidden troops emerging from the shadows. It is Kai-chan, the feared general of the Scarlet Lightning tribe, and he mocks them cruelly for stumbling blindly into his trap. With a single motion, he raises his weapon and orders his soldiers to charge, declaring that none will leave the cavern alive. The two Or tribes collide in a brutal clash within the narrow cave, the sound of steel and war cries echoing off the stone walls. Carrick fights fiercely on the front lines, his weapon cutting down enemy after enemy as he does everything he can to protect his men from the overwhelming assault. Shutra, however, stands frozen in the chaos, clutching a cheap sword with trembling hands as fear grips him. When one of his soldiers falls dead at his feet, the prince realizes he must act or risk losing everything. He considers throwing himself into the fight, hoping to land a decisive blow on a distracted enemy to gain even the smallest bit of experience. Spotting a red orc focused on battling one of his allies, Shutra seizes the opportunity, rushing forward with a desperate cry as he swings his sword with all his strength. But the fragile blade shatters the instant it strikes the enemy's hardened skin, leaving Shutra stunned and defenseless. The red orc slowly turns, its glowing eyes locking onto him with fury, and it lets out a terrifying roar before lunging forward. Shutra screams in panic as the beast stomps the ground, cracking the stone beneath its feet, and delivers a devastating punch that sends the young prince flying through the air. His health bar plummets, dropping instantly to a critical 1 point, and he stares at the notification in sheer terror as the monstrous enemy looms over him, raising its fist to deliver the final fatal blow. Eyes wide with despair, Shutra squeezes them shut, bracing for death with a desperate scream, but at the last second, Carrick hurls himself between them, taking the crushing strike head-on to shield his prince. The loyal warrior absorbs the fatal impact, staggering but refusing to fall, and he shouts for his highness to escape while there is still time. Shutra stares down at his trembling hands, desperately trying to convince himself that this is still just a game, but the sheer pain and terror feel too real. His panic overwhelms him as he attempts to open the menu, complaining bitterly about how hyper-realistic this entire experience has become. But the prince looks on with a grim expression, horrified as he reopens his skill window only to find it completely empty. None of the buffs or skills he saw earlier remain. His breath quickens, sweat running down his temple as he realizes the horrifying truth. There is no safety net here. Frantically, he scrolls through the menu, searching for a log-out option, but his blood runs cold when he discovers there is none. Trapped, he sits on the ground in disbelief as the sounds of his allies screaming and falling echo all around him. His gaze lifts again when he notices Kai-chan, the enemy commander, beginning to chant in a deep, guttural tone as pink energy crackles violently around his staff. The Scarlet Lightning General grins with malice as he leaps into the air, gathering his power and unleashes the full destructive force of his magic down upon the helpless prince. Shutra looks up in terror, desperately thinking that he cannot allow himself to die in this place, but the blast slams into him before he can react, consuming him in a blinding flash of pink light. His body convulses, a final gasp escaping his lips as his consciousness fades into darkness. In the distance, Kai-chan lands triumphantly, his cruel laughter echoing through the cavern as a system window appears before the void, confirming that the prince's health has dropped to 0. Instead of logging out, Shutra suddenly finds himself standing alone in a vast, empty, endless blue void, his surroundings eerily silent as he spins around in confusion, trying to make sense of where he is. The last thing he remembers is being struck down by the red orc in the cavern, and a dreadful thought grips him with icy terror: could he have actually died? Panic begins to take hold, but before he can spiral deeper, a brilliant golden light pierces the emptiness in the distance, shining so brightly that it draws his full attention. A mysterious voice echoes to the void, powerful and commanding, declaring that he is the destiny of this place. From within the radiance, a breathtaking goddess-like figure emerges, her presence overwhelming, her words resonating like divine decree as she proclaims that he is fated to conquer, subjugate, and rule. Shutra is left completely stunned, unable to comprehend the magnitude of the woman's declaration, but before he can question her, his body is pulled away, his consciousness snapping back into reality. The system confirms the activation of Under the King's Banner, a unique ability that empowers all nearby allies. Carrick and the orc soldiers roar as the newfound vigor ignites their spirits, their bodies brimming with strength, and they charge forward with a ferocity unlike anything before. The battlefield shifts in an instant. The Scarlet Lightning tribe, once confident and dominant, are now forced back in shock as the empowered green orcs tear through their ranks with overwhelming force. Kai-chan can only gape in disbelief as his army begins to collapse before his eyes, finally realizing that the young prince is the source of this miraculous reversal. Desperate, the enemy general summons enormous magical crystals, aiming to obliterate Shutra directly, but Carrick intervenes at the perfect moment, his powerful punch shattering the crystals and creating a thick smoke screen. Using Shutra's psychokinesis to propel his movement, Karak lunges forward at blinding speed, guided by his prince's command as Shutra points his broken sword toward their foe. Kai-chan barely has time to react as terror floods his face. The loyal warrior slams into him with devastating force, the blow shattering his defenses and crushing him completely. The Scarlet Lightning General collapses in defeat, and with their leader gone, the remaining Red Orcs break into panic, fleeing in all directions. Shutra raises his voice and commands his forces to pursue, and the system responds with a notification explaining that the merit of a general's victory always belongs to their king. Bombarded with multiple level-up messages in rapid succession, the young prince stares in confusion as his stats skyrocket from the rewards of Karak's triumph. Karak, too, stands stunned, staring at his own hands, bewildered by the surge of power flowing through him, but Shutra only smirks with a new sense of confidence. A brief flashback recalls an earlier moment where his words and actions had already begun to make Karak question whether this prince was truly the same person as before. That night, after their victory, the orc soldiers celebrate wildly around campfires, their spirits high after such an impossible victory. But Shutra sits quietly inside his tent, tormented by the unanswered question of how to escape this world. He frantically searches for a log-out option again and again, forcing himself to stay calm as he considers his situation. The first possibility, he thinks, is that he is trapped due to a critical bug in the VR system, one that might eventually be patched and fixed. But the second possibility, one that terrifies him even more, is that he has somehow been transported into a real world, one that mirrors the game but is undeniably alive. The hyper-realistic backgrounds, the breathing NPCs who speak and think independently, none of it feels artificial. He even checks his own body for signs of pixelation, but finds none, his fear growing as he wonders if the only way to escape is to die within this world. He quickly shakes the thought from his mind, deciding it is far too reckless to even consider. His spiraling panic is interrupted when Karak calls from outside, asking if his prince has a moment to spare. The loyal general enters with a serious expression, informing Shutra that he wants to test something important, his leader's skill with a sword. Shutra frowns in confusion, questioning why such a thing matters, but Karak tosses him a wooden training blade which the startled prince barely manages to catch. The general assures him not to worry, promising to go easy on him during the sparring match, but Shutra scoffs, smirking as he reminds the orc not to underestimate him just because he is their prince. With a grin, he declares that if they are going to fight, they should fight properly. Karak raises his own wooden blade, ready to defend as his prince charges, but Shutra's strike is clumsy and easily dodged. Memories flash through his mind, his past self pitifully trying to learn swordsmanship, swinging a stick at a rock only for it to break in half. In the present, Karak effortlessly parries and counters, sending Shutra stumbling back before knocking him to the ground. The prince groans, rubbing his side and complaining that the orc hit him far too hard, when suddenly a system notification pops up, announcing that he has acquired basic swordsmanship. Shutra stares at the message in disbelief, unable to process how he could possibly gain the skill with no proper training. But then realization dawns. Just like when he gains psychokinesis after experiencing defeat, he can learn skills by directly enduring and adapting. Karak extends his hand, offering to end the duel, but Shutra pushes himself up with a defiant glare, stomping his foot as a confident smirk returns to his face. Declaring that he is just getting started, the young prince prepares to test his newfound skill in earnest, ready to fight again with determination blazing in his eyes. With a renewed sense of purpose, Shutra charged forward, his movements no longer clumsy but fluid and precise, each strike flowing with a newfound sharpness. His blade clashed against Karak's with a flash of light, the sound echoing as sparks flew between them. Karak, surprised by the sudden improvement, wondered how his young prince had struggled so much at first. Shutra pressed on, confidence blazing in his eyes as he continued to trade blows with the much larger and far more experienced warrior. For the first time, he landed gracefully after an exchange, steady on his feet, his strikes no longer wild but sharp and measured. Smirking at his loyal general, he pointed out that the fight had suddenly become much more manageable for him. Curious, the prince asked Karak what his current level was, and the orc calmly replied that it was around 21. Without hesitation, Shutra pulled up his own status window, a bold look flashing across his face. His level was only 7, yet he declared with absolute certainty that he could catch up in no time. Unlike the others in this world, he had the advantage of instantly viewing his detailed stats and distributing bonus points to strengthen himself at will, a game-like mechanic no one else seemed to have. Using this edge, he leapt high into the air, launching a powerful strike at Karak, forcing the seasoned warrior to block with genuine effort. With each clash, Shutra's movements became sharper, his confidence swelling as he realized he could grow far faster than anyone else around him. As the spar continued, his mind drifted to the larger story, the Night Saga game itself, specifically the dreaded Demon Realm arc. He remembered the tragic event known as the Day of Slaughter, the mandatory point in the story where the protagonist, Zephyr, killed all of his siblings to secure his path as the new Demon King. Since Kshatra himself was one of those siblings, that meant his life was already marked for elimination. With this knowledge weighing heavily on him, his top priority became clear. He needed to prevent that event and grow strong enough to surpass Zephyr before it ever came to pass. While lost in thought, Karak found him in the forest and demanded to know why he was loitering there, reminding him about the day's important gathering. Kshatra awkwardly laughed, rushing to join the meeting where his siblings awaited. Sitting at the head of the table, he greeted his older brother Chris Moonlight and sister Caitlin Moonlight, both born to the fourth queen, Elaine of the Lycanthropes. Chris sipped his tea calmly, encouraging Kshatra to speak comfortably as they were family, while Caitlin introduced herself warmly. Noting it was their first time meeting face-to-face, Chris urged him to simply call him Big Brother, and Kshatra nervously agreed. Memories from the game flooded back. He recalled that in the story, both Chris and Caitlin were destined to die a year before the Day of Slaughter, killed by Zephyr and the other royal siblings. Their tragic downfall linked to Caitlin's true parentage as an illegitimate daughter of the Demon King. Caitlin's sudden question snapped him out of his thoughts. She asked why he fought the enemies instead of scouting as ordered. Before he could answer, she rose, walking over to inspect him closely for injuries. Kshatra was caught completely off guard as she leaned in, reminding him that he was the weakest among them and needed to be more careful. Her genuine concern left him shaken, wondering if the Demon King's children were truly this kind-hearted. Chris added sternly that if he ever acted recklessly again, he would answer for it. For the first time, Kshatra questioned if his siblings could really be the ruthless monsters he remembered from the game. A determined spark lit in his eyes as he decided on a new plan. If lycanthropes were renowned aura users, perhaps he could learn aura himself. Locking eyes with Chris, he made a shocking request. With a cheeky grin, he asked his older brother to strike him with his powerful aura. Both Chris and Caitlin froze, staring at him in pure disbelief. Sometime later, back at the main camp, the war with the Scarlet Lightning tribe raged on. The battlefield was chaos. Explosions rocked the ground and orc warriors clashed desperately for survival. A massive armored orc warrior dominated the fight, easily overwhelming red-skinned enemies with crushing strength. His punches shattered bones, his strikes split the earth, and his sheer presence terrified his foes. In response, a red-skinned general roared furiously, ordering his men to kill them all with the promise of rewards. The green orcs answered with a war cry of their own, charging into the fray. Meanwhile, Kshatra suddenly found himself once more in the mysterious void. The radiant goddess-like figure appeared again, her divine presence overwhelming, and two shadowy figures materialized behind him, mysterious entities that never existed in the original game. He stared in confusion, wondering who they were, but before he could think further, the goddess placed her hand gently on his shoulder. His vision was consumed by blinding light, and he jolted awake, gasping as he found himself lying in bed with the morning sun streaming through the entrance of his tent. For a moment, he wondered if everything had been a strange dream, until Karak's face suddenly appeared right before him, making him scream in shock. The general calmly noted that he looked fine and then questioned why he had begged Chris to strike him with aura. Kshatra blinked in confusion but then felt it, a strange, powerful energy flowing through him. A system notification confirmed it. He had acquired aura, level 1. He could now feel it coursing through his body. Excited, he explained his theory that being struck by aura awakened his own, half-guessing correctly. Karak then asked if the strange power surge during their last battle had been his doing. Before Kshatra could answer, Karak delivered more news. While the prince had been unconscious, the main camp had secured a major victory against the Lightning tribe. Kshatra was baffled. He thought only he and his siblings had been sent for that mission. But Karak explained that the main camp had been led by none other than General Bandal, the strongest orc alive. Kshatra froze, stunned by the name. Bandal was a legendary figure, one of the most ridiculously strong characters, and in the original game his personal favorite when playing as Zephyr. A realization struck him like lightning. In the game, Bandal didn't join Zephyr until 3 years later, which meant right now he had the chance to recruit him first. With all of his meta-knowledge, from Bandal's favorite gifts and food to the exact conditions required to sway him, he knew the only way was through a one-on-one challenge. Smirking with new resolve, Kshatra vowed to win Bandal over and make the mighty general his subordinate before Zephyr ever got the chance. Back at Caitlin's base, a new day dawned and the siblings were in for an unexpected surprise, one that left Chris utterly speechless as he stared at his younger brother in disbelief, unable to comprehend how Kshatra had managed to master the Nasok stage of Aura in just a single day. Kshatra, calm and proud, explained that he had dumped all of his stat points into Aura, making such rapid progress an inevitable result, then further elaborated that Aura was not just about strength but enhanced every aspect of physical ability, making it a far better long-term investment than raw power alone. Chris, though still amazed, wondered silently if this miraculous growth was truly because of his brother's Gandharva heritage, his thoughts swirling with a mix of admiration and curiosity, before quickly shifting to a practical matter as he asked Kshatra if he could create a detailed map of the tunnels they had discovered on their previous mission. Without hesitation, Kshatra confirmed he had a mini-map and requested paper and pen to draw it out. His hands moved swiftly and confidently, sketching every path, twist, and turn with remarkable accuracy. Chris leaned in, eyes widening in amazement as the map came to life on the page, declaring it far superior to the rough Mao he had relied on until now, before throwing an arm proudly around his brother and calling him a genius with unrestrained excitement. Caitlin, ever the strategist, pointed out that since they had wiped out the enemy squad during their last encounter, no one else knew about the tunnels, and with a sharp gleam in her eyes, she informed the young prince that she had one more crucial task waiting for him. Soon, the siblings set out into the vast mountainous wilderness, their next operation beginning with cold winds sweeping through towering peaks and silent forests. Kshatra accepted his role as the weakest of the group, once again tasked with scouting, but this time he felt reassured knowing they had reinforcements thanks to the credit they had earned from past victories. As they marched into the dense forest, Kshatra's sharp gaze caught two hooded figures lurking in the shadows. He was startled when one of them lowered her hood just enough to reveal it was none other than Caitlin herself, her face half hidden by the cloak. Puzzled, he asked why she was in disguise, but she quickly shushed him, whispering that she was secretly tagging along to ensure safety should anything unexpected occur. Though surprised by her trust, he scoffed at the idea of achievements and focused instead on his own personal goals, while the second hooded figure introduced herself as Sierra, the agent assigned to assist him on this critical mission. Caitlin reminded him to concentrate on his scouting duties and not concern himself with their presence, as they would follow silently on their own terms. Soon the group ventured deep into the icy caverns of the tunnel system they had uncovered before, their footsteps echoing through vast hollow chambers, but every room they searched turned out to be empty, stripped bare of life or valuables. Karak muttered that the drawers must have cleared everything out long ago before abandoning the place. But his words were cut short when he suddenly stopped, instincts warning him of something moving in the darkness ahead. Kshatra immediately checked his mini-map, confirming the presence of a large cluster of enemies lying in wait just beyond the shadows. Remaining calm and composed, he reached into his inventory and pulled out a flash magic potion, his face set with determination as he whispered to Karak, instructing him to order everyone to close their eyes when he gave the signal. Moments later, dozens of glowing red eyes pierced the darkness, revealing a monstrous swarm of rock spiders creeping toward them, their bodies twitching with hunger, their venomous fangs glistening with deadly paralytic poison. Without hesitation, Kshatra hurled the potion forward, and with a deafening shatter it burst apart, flooding the cavern with a searing explosion of radiant golden light. The sudden brilliance illuminated every jagged wall of the cavern and sent the spiders screeching in agony, their many legs thrashing wildly as they were left disoriented and stunned. Seizing the moment, Kshatra shouted that the creatures were immobilized by light and commanded his soldiers to attack, and with a roar the orc warriors charged forward, their war cries echoing as steel clashed against Katin, cutting down the paralyzed monsters in a furious wave of battle. While his forces handled the swarm, Kshatra's eyes returned to the minimap where a single massive red dot pulsed among the smaller ones, proof that every pack had a leader, and this swarm was no different. Calling for Karak to follow, he broke away from the chaos of the battlefield, racing deeper into the cavern until they came face to face with a towering monstrosity, a spider far larger and more grotesque than the rest, its many eyes glowing with malevolence as it loomed over them. Karak roared with ferocity and swung his mighty axe, but the weapon struck the beast's armored shell only to spark uselessly, bouncing off without leaving so much as a crack. Stunned, he cursed at the creature's impenetrable hide, realizing his strongest blows meant nothing. Kshatra, recalling his knowledge from the game, knew that the boss spider's armor was nearly unbreakable, with its only true weakness being fire, a power he unfortunately lacked. The monstrous arachnid lunged at them, its mandibles snapping with deadly precision, forcing Karak to brace for the crushing attack. But just as the situation seemed dire, a new voice suddenly rang out, sharp and commanding, telling Kshatriya to draw his sword immediately. Stunned, he questioned if what he heard was truly magical channeling. And then Caitlin stepped forward, her aura blazing with power as she prepared an enchantment. The massive spider bore down on them, its killing intent suffocating. But with Caitlin's enchantment flowing into his weapon, flames erupted along the blade, transforming it into a blazing torch of destruction. Kshatriya's eyes narrowed with fierce resolve as he raised the fiery sword, stepping boldly forward to meet the beast head-on. He parried its strike with a powerful slash, the impact sending a shockwave through the cavern, then launched himself into the air, cape billowing dramatically as he prepared a final devastating attack. With a roar, he brought the burning blade down in a sweeping arc, engulfing the spider's countless eyes in searing flames, the cavern itself trembling under the force of his fiery assault. The fiery slash tore through the monstrous spider, spreading flames across the cavern floor and leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. The young prince landing with grace, his expression calm yet brimming with determination after such a decisive strike. In that very moment, glowing notifications flooded his vision, rewarding him with multiple level-ups for defeating the fearsome boss. And when he checked his status, a satisfied smile touched his lips as he realized he had reached level 9, a milestone that marked true progress. Caitlin, still stunned, asked about the light she had seen, but Kshatriya dismissed it casually as a blessing from the Gandharva, a quick and clever lie to mask the truth of his unique abilities. She pressed further, wondering how he had known exactly how to handle the rock spiders, and he smoothly claimed that he had simply read about them in a book, another well-placed deception. Before the conversation could continue, Karak called out sharply, pointing deeper into the cavern, where the group soon discovered a massive ornate gate built directly into the stone wall, an ancient structure that seemed completely out of place in such a desolate underground system. With cautious steps, they entered through the heavy gate into a vast chamber illuminated by flickering torches, and Kshatriya froze for a moment as recognition washed over him. He had seen this design before during his time as a player, realizing with awe that they had stumbled upon a town portal, an invaluable find with limitless possibilities. Karak asked if he knew what it was, but Kshatriya only shrugged, claiming he had a feeling about it, though he noted with certainty that its style was dwarven, which matched the faint memories from his gameplay experience. He remembered that these portals could only be activated by channeling sufficient magic, and though he concealed how much he truly knew, he confidently told his sister that he believed it was a teleportation device. Caitlin's eyes widened at his words, and while Sierra agreed with the assessment, she asked if they knew where it actually led. At that moment, Karak pointed to a stone plaque set beside the portal, etched with strange writing that shimmered faintly under the torchlight. The group gathered to examine it, Caitlin identifying it as common demon language, shaped into dwarven script, but admitted she could not read it herself, and even Sierra, despite her experience, apologized that she too was unable to make sense of it. To everyone's shock, Kshatriya casually began reading the inscription aloud, announcing that the portal was connected to another in the same network, only to falter midway when confusion struck him. How was he suddenly able to understand Dwarven script? Right then, a system notification confirmed he had acquired Dwarven script level 1, granting him the ability to decipher the writing. Karak was amazed at this sudden gift, while Caitlin and Sierra questioned when he had learned such a skill, but he deflected and pressed on, finishing the translation. The inscription explained that the portal would activate once infused with magic, so Kshatriya asked Caitlin to power it up, though she teasingly told him to try it himself. Kshatriya quickly pointed out their location and traced the connection to the linked portal shown on the map, while Karak gravely noted that the Scarlet Lightning tribe's main forces were stationed directly in front of that mountain range, making this discovery strategically critical. With night falling, Caitlin decided they would stop for the day, planning to discuss the new advantage further at camp. Back at their base, Chris was elated when he heard of the portal, embracing his younger brother with genuine joy and calling him a good luck charm, even promising to do anything for him as a reward. Though Kshatriya initially tried to refuse, his brother insisted, both as family and as a leader who wanted to honor him. So after a moment of hesitation, the young prince voiced the desire that had been burning in his heart. He wanted to grow stronger and asked his brother to teach him the legendary Beast Godfist martial art. Chris was struck silent, startled by the seriousness of the request, as Kshatriya explained that since his level was still too low to properly wield advanced weapons, he wanted to learn martial techniques instead, knowing full well the beast god fist was an S-rank art, passed only through the lycanthrope royal bloodline. He expected Chris to refuse, but to his astonishment, his older brother smiled and agreed, though with one condition: he could not teach the full beast god fist, but he would train Kshatriya in its secret aura techniques, knowledge that was just as valuable. Kshatriya was left speechless by the generosity of the offer, his heart racing with excitement, though his silence made Chris briefly assume he was dissatisfied, until the boy quickly reassured him otherwise. Then Chris grew serious, locking eyes with his younger brother and asking softly if it would be all right to think of him as another little brother, just like Caitlin. Taken aback, Kshatriya realized the weight of those words, that this was not only training but a declaration of acceptance, a recognition of true kinship. Understanding the gravity of the moment, he agreed wholeheartedly, and the two brothers clasped hands firmly, sealing their newfound bond as Caitlin looked on with a gentle smile, pleased to finally see her siblings united. His system notification confirmed the formation of a normal alliance with his brother and sister, the status still basic but marking an important beginning for their shared future. As the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky with a warm orange glow, peace settled over the camp, but far away at the Scarlet Lightning tribe's garrison, darkness stirred. The Red Orc soldiers stood alert, their grim expressions lit by torchlight as a powerful, cunning commander addressed his men with a cruel smirk, speaking of their dear princess, hinting at a captive hidden in their camp. Deep within a candlelit tent, bound tightly by chains of sinister magic, a young woman waited in silence, the shadows whispering of the darker trials yet to come. Kshatriya carefully reviewed his stats, his brow furrowing as his gaze lingered on one particular number: his charisma. Compared to his other attributes, it was clearly lagging behind. He noticed a strange pattern. While every other stat had been rising by 2 points per level, charisma had only increased by 1. A puzzled look crossed his face as he wondered why his charm was growing slower than the rest. After a moment of thought, a realization struck him. Back in Night Saga, the original game this world was based on, appearance and charisma were separate attributes, each serving distinct roles. Appearance influenced how characters were perceived visually, while charisma affected leadership and persuasion. Remembering that, he nodded slightly to himself. It made sense that the system might have merged or adjusted the mechanics in this world. Still, he couldn't help but feel curious. His other stats were skyrocketing, yet charisma seemed to resist that same rapid growth. Pushing the thought aside, Kshatriya's expression shifted from curiosity to anticipation. He was close, so close, to reaching level 10. That milestone meant more than just a number. In Night Saga, reaching level 10 marked the awakening of a character's unique skill evolution, a defining moment in any player's journey. Before he could dive deeper into his thoughts, Carrick's voice called out from outside the tent, snapping him back to the present. "Everything's ready, Prince. We're moving out." Kshatriya glanced toward the entrance and smiled faintly, his earlier contemplation replaced with renewed determination. "Good," he said confidently, his tone laced with quiet excitement. Carrick raised an eyebrow, clearly noticing his prince's unusually good mood, but before he could comment, Kshatriya brushed it off with a composed grin. "Just eager to get this done," he replied, concealing the flicker of genuine thrill in his chest. Together, the two stepped out of the tent, the dry wind sweeping across the encampment as the orc army stood assembled before them. Hundreds of disciplined soldiers waited in formation, their armor gleaming dully under the pale sun. The atmosphere was tense but electric, every warrior's gaze fixed on their prince awaiting his signal. Kshatriya's eyes hardened. "Forward," he commanded, his voice steady yet powerful. The ground trembled as the army began to march toward the dark cave looming in the distance. The entrance looked almost alive, its black maw breathing out waves of cold air. Inside, the sounds of battle echoed faintly. Lycanthrope soldiers, wolf-like humanoids, were already locked in combat with the monstrous inhabitants of the cave. Their savage howls and the clash of steel reverberated through the tunnels. These elite fighters moved with feral precision, cutting through the beasts as they cleared a path to the ornate stone gate deeper within. By the time Kshatriya and his group arrived, 2 hooded lycanthrope mages were already at work inspecting the gate, a massive ancient portal covered in glowing runes. The mages exchanged quick words, then turned to report. "It's stable, Your Highness," one said. "The destination coordinates match your prediction. It leads to the Eska tributary." The second mage nodded, adding proudly, "As expected of dwarven craftsmanship, it's functioning perfectly." Satisfied, Chris, the older prince, stepped forward and gave the order to proceed. The mages raised their staffs, channeling threads of shimmering magic into the portal's carved frame. Within seconds, the runes began to glow brighter until a swirling gateway of blue and silver energy burst to life, humming with power. The light illuminated everyone's faces, reflecting awe, anticipation, and tension. Staring at the glowing portal, his green eyes wide with fascination. "So this is a real teleport gate," he whispered. Having only ever seen them in the game before, witnessing one in person felt surreal. His heart pounded as excitement replaced his earlier calm. Just then, his sister's voice echoed behind him, breaking his trance. "Hey, quit staring and let's go, little brother," she called teasingly. Snapping out of his thoughts, Kshatriya grinned and hurried forward to join them. Through the portal felt like plunging into water and emerging somewhere completely new. When the bright light faded, they found themselves standing in a harsh, rocky landscape. The air here was thinner, colder, carrying the scent of iron and dust. From their elevated position atop a jagged cliff, the group gazed down at a sprawling enemy encampment stretching far across the valley below. Chris surveyed the area with a tactical gleam in his eyes. "Just as we thought, their base is right where the reports said," he said calmly. "I estimate around 5,000 troops." His voice dropped slightly. "Our first priority is their logistics officer, cut off the supply chain." He began outlining a strategic pincer attack, assigning General Vandal to lead the frontal assault. But before he could finish, Sierra frowned. "Something's off," she said, her tone cautious. "There aren't nearly as many soldiers as there should be." Her sharp eyes scanned the distant formations, counting fewer units than expected. Chris's brows knitted. "Then where are the rest of them?" A faint boom echoed across the valley, a distant explosion followed by the unmistakable sound of battle. The group turned toward the noise, the prince narrowing his eyes. "There," he said firmly. "Something's already happening." Chris gestured toward Kshatriya. "Focus your aura into your eyes," he instructed. "You'll see clearer." Kshatriya nodded, closing his eyes for a brief moment before channeling his aura upward. When he opened them again, his pupils glowed faintly white, the world sharpening around him. He could see further than ever before, movement, clashing steel, and flashes of light miles away. A fierce battle was already raging in the distance, and whatever was happening there, it was about to draw them into the heart of it. Through his enhanced vision, Kshatriya could now clearly see the clash unfolding in the distance, a violent struggle between the Red Lightning tribe and an unknown force. Sparks of crimson and obsidian magic flared against the dusty horizon as war cries echoed faintly through the wind. He recognized the Red Lightning orcs immediately. Their massive frames, red war paint, and jagged axes were unmistakable. But their opponents were unlike anything he'd seen so far in this world. Their movements were fluid, graceful, and precise, a stark contrast to the brute force of the orcs. Then it hit him. These weren't humans or monsters. They were dark elves. A sharp breath escaped him. "They're dark elves," he murmured, his tone a mix of disbelief and intrigue. The others turned toward him, surprised. Chris frowned. "Dark elves? Here? That's impossible. They shouldn't even be in this region." Kshatriya didn't look away from the scene, his eyes narrowing as the glow from his aura illuminated the edges of his face. "Their size gives it away," he explained. "They're smaller than orcs, and look, those creatures they're riding, Dracos. Only dark elves use them as mounts." The revelation left everyone uneasy. Dark elves were known for their unmatched agility, ruthless tactics, and mysterious allegiance. Their sudden appearance here meant something was deeply out of place. Down below, the tide of battle shifted unexpectedly. Chris noticed the dark elves pulling back. "They're withdrawing," he said in confusion. "Why?" Sierra's expression hardened. "Maybe their commander fell," she speculated. The others exchanged uncertain looks as the dark elves vanished into the tree line with astonishing speed, leaving behind only the roaring orcs and the scorched earth. The entire group was left in stunned silence, questioning what they had just witnessed. Even the usually composed prince seemed unsettled. What were dark elves doing all the way out here? Kshatriya muttered under his breath, his mind racing with unanswered questions. Hours later, after returning to their main encampment, the siblings gathered inside the command tent. A soft hum filled the air as a holographic projection flickered to life. General Vandal's massive form appeared before them, his ogre features stern but composed. "Prince Chris," he greeted in a deep, rumbling voice. "I heard the rumors, and it seems they're true. You actually found the portal." His tone carried a hint of admiration. "Impressive work. How did you even know it existed?" Chris immediately shifted the credit toward his younger brother, offering a modest smile. It was Shutra who discovered it. Pure instinct, or maybe just luck, he said. Shutra simply shrugged, downplaying the moment. Just happened to be at the right place, he replied lightly. Luck or not, the Demon King's castle will reward you handsomely. You've done the Empire a great service. But then his expression darkened, the levity in his tone fading into something far more serious. Now, about that skirmish near the Red Lightning Orcs territory, he began. The siblings straightened, sensing the change in mood. Our scouts confirmed it wasn't just a random clash. The Dark Elves interfered on their own. No orders, no coordination with our command. They acted independently. Chris frowned deeply. That doesn't make sense. Weren't there supposed to be reinforcements from the Demon King's castle? Why would the Dark Elves move on their own? Vandal sighed heavily, rubbing the back of his neck. Because there's been a complication, he said grimly. A major one. He paused for a beat before continuing, his voice dropping lower. Their commander was captured by the Red Lightning Orcs. The words hit like a thunderbolt. Shutra's eyes widened. Captured? Who was leading them? He asked quickly, leaning forward. Vandal's gaze hardened as he met their eyes through the projection. Someone you know, he said slowly. Someone very important. The silence stretched for a long moment before he finally spoke the name. It's the sixth princess, Felicia Doomblade. The room fell silent. Chris froze in disbelief, while Caitlyn's hand instinctively rose to her mouth. Felicia? She whispered, her voice trembling. Vandal nodded gravely. Yes, the daughter of the third queen, the former Dark Elf princess and Sylvan's twin sister. The revelation hit them all at once, their own sister, captured by the enemy. The shock was suffocating. Chris clenched his fists, a storm brewing in his eyes as the realization sank in. Their family's blood was now entangled in the chaos of war, and saving her would soon become their next most dangerous mission yet. Shutra leaned back against the wooden post of the tent, his mind racing as he recalled what he knew from Night Saga. In the original game, both Felicia and her twin brother Sylvan had belonged to the 4th Princess Anastasia's faction, not this one. Her sudden appearance in this region didn't fit the story he remembered. Something was off. He wondered if she was acting on her own, trying to claim glory before the others arrived. Why is she even here? He muttered to himself. Chris, standing beside him, crossed his arms with a grim expression. Do the Red Lightning Orcs even know who they've captured? That she's a Dark Elf princess? He asked sharply. General Vandal's deep voice rumbled through the holographic projection. Not sure yet, he admitted. My scouts haven't been able to confirm anything. All we know is that she's alive, for now. The tent fell into a tense silence as they discussed their next move. Caitlyn's eyes were filled with worry, while Chris's gaze remained cold and analytical. We'll rescue her if we can, Chris finally said, his tone calm but firm. But there will be no negotiations. I won't bow my head to those savages to save her. His words carried a weight that made both Caitlyn and Shutra glance at him in surprise. Even General Vandal paused for a moment before nodding. Understood. I'll gather more intelligence and contact you once I have confirmation, he said before the hologram flickered out, leaving the siblings alone in the dim glow of the lanterns. For a long moment, no one spoke. The sound of the crackling fire outside filled the silence. Chris broke it first, smirking faintly. So, our dear sister managed to get herself captured, he said dryly, though the humor didn't reach his eyes. Caitlyn turned toward him, her jaw tight. We have to save her, she said fiercely. She's still our sister. But Chris only sighed, shaking his head. It won't be easy, Kate. You know what kind of mess this could cause. His tone was steady, but the hesitation in his eyes didn't go unnoticed. Caitlyn's anger softened for a moment as she realized the truth. He wasn't being cold, he was being cautious. Still, her resolve didn't waver. We must save her, she said again, more determined than before. A bead of sweat ran down Chris's temple as he looked away, the weight of leadership pressing down on him.
Fine,
he said finally, but we do this smart. No unnecessary risks. He summoned his commanders, the Leanthrope Guard standing rigidly at attention outside as the plan took form. Chris laid out the operation with precision. General Vandal would lead a full-scale frontal assault to lure the Red Lightning Tribe's main forces away, while their unit would launch a surprise strike from behind. We burn their food stores, destroy their armory, and extract Felicia, Chris instructed, his tone clipped and authoritative. Shutra nodded, repeating the objectives to confirm. Burn, destroy, rescue. Got it. But before anyone could speak further, Chris added one more condition. If things get too dangerous, we pull back. No arguments. Caitlyn immediately objected, her eyes flashing. We can't just abandon her if it gets hard. But Chris's voice cut through the tent like steel. That's an order, Caitlyn. Don't forget, I'm a unit leader too. His glare silenced her. We can't let Felicia's reckless decisions jeopardize the mission. Too many lives are on the line. Shutra glanced between them, realizing something deeper. Chris didn't actually want to save their sister. There was tension between them, something cold and unresolved that ran deeper than mere strategy. He wondered what had happened between Chris and Felicia to make him so bitter. As the night deepened, the camp stirred with movement. The sound of armor clinking, swords being drawn, and low growls from the Lyanthrop soldiers filled the air. On the distant horizon, the fires of war began to burn. General Vandal's troops were already advancing, their massive silhouettes outlined by the glow of torches. The ogre general roared, his booming voice echoing through the valley.
Charge! Leave none standing. The Red Lightning tribe falls tonight.
His army surged forward like a flood, their war cries shaking the ground. From a high cliff overlooking the enemy camp, Chris and his siblings watched the chaos unfold. The night sky flashed with explosions, lighting up the battlefield in bursts of red and orange. The ground quaked under the impact of giant hammers and spells colliding. Vandal's forces clashed brutally with the orcs, the sound of metal against flesh reverberating through the air. A hulking ogre warrior tore through enemy lines, eyes glowing crimson as he shouted for his men to kill every last one of them. Carrick gripped his weapon, glancing at Shutra. "Do we move?" he asked. Shutra shook his head. "Not yet. Wait for Chris's signal." Below them, the battlefield was a storm of fire and fury. Blood soaked the dirt, weapons clashed in flashes of steel, and the screams of the dying rose into the smoky air. General Vandal, still composed amid the chaos, observed the fight with grim focus before raising his massive hand. "Now, fall back," he commanded. His forces began to retreat in perfect coordination, setting the enemy camp ablaze as they withdrew. Flames roared, consuming tents and siege engines. From the cliff, Chris watched the inferno with a steady gaze.
"That's our cue," he said calmly, turning to his troops. "It's our turn." The siblings exchanged a final glance, determination gleaming in their eyes. Caitlin tightened her grip on her blade, Shutra adjusted his gauntlets, and Chris drew his sword, its steel reflecting the burning night. "Move out," he ordered.
And with that, they leapt into the darkness below, their army following close behind as the next stage of the battle began. They charged down the cliff in a storm of motion, their soldiers right behind them, shouting fierce war cries that echoed through the smoky night. The Red Lightning orcs were caught completely off guard by the sudden and devastating flank attack. The Lyanthrop and orc warriors tore through their ranks like a violent wave, their combined strength overwhelming the enemy in moments. Caitlin yelled out to her younger brother, warning him to stay sharp as they plunged deeper into the chaos of battle. Shutra pulled up his mini-map, his eyes scanning it rapidly as he used it to navigate through the twisting paths of the enemy camp with calculated precision. He barked an order to his unit, telling them to follow him to the left, a direct route that would take them straight to the enemy's food storage. Carrick let out a thunderous roar, swinging his massive axe as he commanded his men to slaughter every last one of their foes. He collided with a red orc head-on, the sheer power behind his swing shattering the enemy's weapon and sending the orc flying through the air like a rag doll. The dying creature's cry was drowned out by the clash of steel and the savage chorus of the battlefield. Carrick pressed forward, an unstoppable force of destruction, his movements a deadly blur of muscle and fury. Another enemy lunged at him, but Carrick easily deflected the attack, his weapon cleaving through the orc's armor like paper. His unmatched skill and brute strength made him a terrifying sight to behold amid the fire and chaos. Meanwhile, a glowing blue notification flickered into view before Shutra's eyes. Skill acquired. Dagger throwing, level 1. A smirk crossed his face. A new deadly trick was now his to wield. Carrick glanced at the glowing system window in awe, momentarily stunned by the prince's sudden improvement, but Shutra waved it off, his tone sharp as he ordered him to stay focused. They reached the food storage area, and without hesitation, Shutra commanded his men to set everything ablaze. Flames quickly spread, devouring the supplies and filling the air with thick smoke. But as the fire roared, a sudden thought struck Shutra like lightning. Felicia. His expression hardened, a flash of worry crossing his face. He turned to Carrick, shouting over the noise that they had to find her first. The orc hesitated, unsure of how they could track her down in the chaos, but Shutra's eyes were already fixed on his mini-map. His voice steadied, filled with confidence. He explained that since Felicia was a neutral NPC, she would appear as a blue or purple marker on the map. His eyes widened as he spotted a single purple dot blinking near a tent just ahead. Without wasting a second, he ordered Carrick to follow, and together they sprinted toward the tent. They burst through the flap, weapons drawn, their sudden entrance catching the occupant completely off guard. Shutra's gaze swept the room, scanning every corner with intensity, certain this was the place. But Felicia wasn't immediately visible. Then, a soft but familiar voice broke through the noise, calling his name. He turned sharply, and there she was, his older sister, the sixth princess, Felicia Doomblade, standing bound by glowing crimson restraints that shimmered with dark magic. The sight of her alive brought a rush of relief, though the enchanted bindings told him she was far from free. Felicia met his eyes with a faint, pained smile and asked in disbelief how he had managed to find her in the heart of the enemy camp. Felicia stood frozen, her eyes wide with disbelief as she stared at her younger brother. For a moment she couldn't believe what she was seeing, that the reckless, stubborn boy she once knew was now standing before her in the middle of an enemy camp. Kshatriya quickly told her that it was far too dangerous to stay and that he would untie her so they could escape immediately. The princess remained silent, her expression calm but unreadable, processing the unexpected reality of her rescue. Once the magical restraints dissolved, the siblings slipped out of the tent, their movements quick and cautious as they navigated through the burning camp. Felicia was stunned to learn that their other siblings were also nearby, part of the effort to save her. A trace of suspicion crept into her voice as she asked whether someone who wasn't supposed to be there had come to her rescue. Before Kshatriya could answer, Carrick's booming voice cut through the chaos, warning them that enemy forces were closing in fast. Without hesitation, Kshatriya grabbed his sister's hand and urged her to follow him. As they sprinted through the battlefield, dodging fire and debris, Felicia was momentarily taken aback when he called her sis, a familiar term that hit her differently, a small but undeniable sign that their relationship was beginning to change. They raced through the chaos, but before they could reach safety, Felicia suddenly shouted a warning, her voice trembling with urgency. Out of nowhere, a massive red orc soldier appeared behind Kshatriya and struck him hard across the back, sending him stumbling forward. He gasped in pain, a thin line of blood running down his lips as the unexpected attack knocked the air from his lungs. The enemy raised his hands, releasing a burst of fire that erupted into a violent explosion. Felicia screamed her brother's name and, driven by panic and rage, rushed toward the attacker. Her eyes burned with fury as she clenched her fists, golden light flickering within her gaze. Channeling her own latent power, she unleashed a devastating blast of energy that sent the red orc flying backward. The explosion of her attack shook the ground, and as the smoke cleared, she noticed something strange, a swirl of dark mist rising from the orc's fallen body. From that eerie smoke, a shadowy figure emerged, its presence cold and suffocating. A system notification flickered before Kshatriya's eyes. Magic control acquired. Skill, Fire Arrow. A confident smirk spread across his face as he realized he had gained access to real magic. But before he could fully process the moment, a new threat appeared. A monstrous fiery beast, its body blazing with molten heat. Instead of fear, excitement flashed in his eyes. He conjured a glowing bow made of pure flame, pulling back the string as fiery arrows materialized one after another. With a grin, he fired rapidly, each arrow streaking through the air and striking true. The enemies around him fell one by one as his laughter echoed across the battlefield, exhilarated by the discovery that he could now wield real magic in this new world. But his thrill was short-lived. From the side, a massive wave of icy energy surged toward them, a new attack from an unseen enemy. The sudden burst of freezing air caught him off guard. Ice magic, something entirely unfamiliar to him. Amid the chaos, an enemy archer took aim, his icy arrow drawn tight and pointed straight at the defenseless princess. Without thinking, Kshatriya lunged, pushing Felicia out of the way just as the arrow flew. The icy projectile pierced into him instead, the cold burning deep into his flesh. Felicia gasped, horrified by his selfless act, her voice trembling as she called his name. Shards of ice rained down from above, a deadly barrage targeting the wounded prince. Kshatriya looked up, his face pale but determined, a wild glint in his eyes. With a defiant grin, he declared that this power was his for the taking. The shards slammed into the ground around him, exploding into a storm of frost and light. When the smoke cleared, his small silhouette stood amidst the frozen haze, a system message confirming his newest skill. Ice Arrow Level 1. He smirked through the pain, but his triumph was short-lived. The power of the ice blast sent him flying backward, his body slamming into the ground. A red warning flashed before his eyes. Critical HP. Health dangerously low. He gritted his teeth, frustration and pain mixing in his expression. Felicia rushed to his side, scolding him for his recklessness. Her voice trembled between anger and concern as she demanded to know who gave him permission to risk his life for her. She called him the weakest among their siblings, asking who he thought he was trying to save anyone. Kshatriya blinked, confused by her reaction. She had completely misunderstood his intentions. Then, as her gaze shifted past him to a defeated mage nearby, he realized that she had already handled the threat herself. A small, ironic smile crossed his lips. She believed he had saved her, and maybe letting her think that wasn't such a bad thing. Suddenly, a warm green light enveloped him. Felicia had knelt beside him, her hands glowing with healing magic. She placed them gently on his chest, channeling her energy into his wounds. The torn cloth over his armor shimmered with the same light as his health slowly began to recover. Another notification appeared. Heal, level 1 acquired. Felicia asked softly if he was feeling better, and he nodded, mentioning that his HP was now full, a term she didn't understand but brushed aside. Before they could say anything more, a deep, thunderous roar shook the battlefield. Massive, red-skinned ogre with glowing crimson eyes stepped out of the shadows, its body radiating overwhelming, violent energy. Kshatriya's face paled as he recognized the creature, a blood ogre, one of the most powerful and savage mutations of its kind. The ground trembled beneath its weight as it stomped forward, each breath a growl that vibrated through the air. Felicia and Kshatriya stood side by side, the flames and ice surrounding them casting shifting light across their faces. Despite the fear twisting in his gut, Kshatriya tightened his grip on his weapon, his mind racing. He swallowed hard, his voice quiet but steady as he muttered under his breath, wondering how they were supposed to fight something that powerful. The red goblin came charging after them, its grotesque form moving with shocking speed as it swung its crude weapon down with terrifying force. Kshatriya glanced back in sheer panic, his mind racing. What the hell? How is it so damn fast? Felicia's voice rang out behind him, calm but commanding. Buy me some time. I'll gather my magic and finish it off. Her words made his eyes widen in disbelief. Buy time? He shouted in alarm.
How am I supposed to buy time against that thing?
The ground exploded behind him as the goblin's next strike landed, showering them with dirt and debris. Still sprinting, Kshatriya muttered under his breath. Okay, fine. I'll figure out a way to draw its aggro. You just focus on your magic.
Felicia frowned, confused by his strange word. Aggro? What's that supposed to mean?
Just get ready and don't ask, he barked, eyes scanning the battlefield for an opening.
Karak!
Where the hell are you? Up ahead, Karak turned at once, responding in his booming voice. I'm here, boss. Kshatriya signaled with a sharp motion, the same way as before. Get ready. Yes, sir, Kedg replied, his muscles tensing in anticipation. Kshatriya brought up his system screen mid-run, his eyes flicking rapidly over the glowing interface. All right, he muttered, I should be able to use the dwarven dagger now. A dagger materialized on the screen before appearing in his hand, a compact yet deadly blade pulsing faintly with power. His expression hardened as he focused on the red goblin ahead. The dagger's edge shimmered with energy, and he slammed it into the ground with all his strength. Instantly, a surge of radiant force burst forth from the point of impact, spreading out beneath the soil like rippling lightning. The power raced across the ground, heading straight toward Karak, who braced himself for the impact. The moment it reached him, his body was engulfed in energy, his veins glowing with fiery light. Gritting his teeth, he gripped his massive cleaver tighter as strength surged through him. When the energy reached its peak, Karak let out a thunderous roar and charged. The red goblin looked up just in time to see a towering ogre coming down on it from above, cleaver raised high. The goblin instinctively swung its weapon up to block, sparks flying as steel clashed against steel. But Karak didn't stop. He pressed his full weight into the attack, forcing the goblin to stagger backward as his blade tore into its stomach. The creature howled in agony, a sharp hiss of pain echoing across the battlefield. In that instant, Felicia appeared, her form momentarily transparent, gliding through the air like a wraith. She reappeared in a burst of power, a radiant wave of energy exploding outward from her hands. The red goblin screamed, its skin burning under her assault as it stumbled backward.
Get lost! It roared, trying to resist, but her magic forced it to leap into the air. Another wave of power struck before it could recover, sending it crashing down hard.
It hit the ground with a sickening thud, paralyzed and unable to move. Karak seized the moment. He leaped high, his eyes glowing blood red, cleaver gleaming in the firelight. It's over, he bellowed as he brought the blade down with bone-crushing force. The impact shattered the earth beneath them, a thunderous crack echoing across the field. The red goblin coughed up a spray of blood, writhing in pain as Carrick continued to stomp on its stomach, each blow sending up a fresh burst of blood and dust. Kshatriya stood off to the side, watching the brutal scene unfold. His lips curled into a triumphant grin. "Ha, we did it. We actually won," he said, his chest heaving with adrenaline. "There are still more enemies out there, but the toughest one's down." Suddenly, a strange warmth spread through his body, a surge of power he hadn't felt before. He looked down, startled, as a glowing aura enveloped him, and a new system screen popped up in front of his eyes. Level up, level 10 achieved. His heart leapt. Finally, level 10. A second message appeared. Protagonist buff has leveled up. He couldn't contain his grin. Nice. Protagonist buff level 2 unlocked, and a new passive skill added. He quickly navigated to his new reward. "Should I open the gift box now?" he muttered before selecting it. A new message appeared. Blessing of the Battlefield, level 1. Accuracy of long-range attacks aimed at the protagonist is slightly reduced. Kshatriya burst out laughing, his eyes wide with amusement. "Oh my god, this is literally the Stormtrooper effect. You know that movie scene where like 50 guys fire bullets at the hero, but every shot somehow misses? That's me now." He laughed again, exhilarated. "With this, I can literally pull off that unstoppable protagonist aura." His celebration was cut short by the thunder of approaching footsteps. A new horde of red goblins was charging straight toward them. "Kshatriya, what are you doing? The enemy's coming," Felicia yelled, snapping him back to reality. "Huh, oh, right." He turned, spotting his sister, her face pale, her movements slower from exhaustion. But even drained of energy, Felicia still managed to raise her hands and summon another blast of power. "Oh, wind roar," she shouted, releasing a powerful gust that erupted from her palms. The wind tore through the battlefield, sending the charging goblins tumbling backward in chaos. Kshatriya's eyes widened as he watched the display. That's not magic, he realized, his gaze sharp with understanding. It's spirits. She's using spirits. Even fallen elves still have that gift. He could now see it clearly. The faint glowing energy swirling around Felicia wasn't just mana, it was spiritual energy. A true sign of a dark elf's lineage. She's not just a skilled mage, he murmured to himself with awe. She's a natural-born spirit master. As the dust settled, Felicia struggled to steady herself, still channeling her strength to hold off the enemies. Meanwhile, Kshatriya's eyes gleamed with a mixture of admiration and ambition. A sly, hungry smile tugged at his lips as a thought crossed his mind, a dangerous mix of curiosity and greed lighting up his face as he watched his sister's incredible power unfold before him. A brilliant yellow flare shot into the sky, catching the attention of Kshatriya's soldiers as they instinctively looked upward, puzzled. Carrick's brow furrowed, and he asked, "Prince, what does the flare signal mean?" Kshatriya didn't hesitate. "Yellow means retreat," he said firmly, though confusion flickered in his mind. "What's happening? Is someone in danger?" he wondered. "Carrick, retreat," he added, issuing his orders quickly. Carrick froze, worry written all over his face. "Prince, what should we do? Give me the command." Kshatriya's gaze hardened as he assigned tasks with precision. "Carrick, you lead the troops and retreat first. I have to go to Sister Colin." Carrick blinked, hesitant. "Ah, what do you mean, sir? Then let me go with you," he pleaded. Kshatriya replied firmly, "There must be a reason for this retreat order. Just follow my orders for now." Carrick looked equally bewildered, unsure how to respond. Felicia stepped forward, her determination evident. "I'll go with Kshatriya," she said, addressing Carrick and him directly. "I don't like being indebted to anyone, so I want a chance to repay the favor. Besides, I have some business to settle with those pigs." Carrick had no choice but to accept, reminding them, "Then please be careful, I'll wait for you up there." Kshatriya moved swiftly, Felicia following behind. She glanced at him, skeptical. "Do you really need to go to Kalin?" He didn't respond, inwardly worrying. "This sudden retreat order feels suspicious." Felicia continued, "Do you think she could lose to those guys?" Kshatriya's jaw tightened. "I hope not. Otherwise, how could we all retreat together safely?" He thought, guilt and concern mixing in his chest. Felicia noticed his worry, her expression softening. "You're that worried about Kalin?" Kshatriya grunted, embarrassed. "Well, of course. She's my sister, and because she's an ally." Felicia's arms crossed, eyes fixed on him, silently acknowledging his reasoning. At Colin's camp, chaos erupted as a horde of red goblins surged toward her. Calm and precise, Colin countered with rapid punches, her movements sharp and decisive. She extended her hand, generating a force that violently shattered the goblins' stomachs, sending them flying in panic. The remaining two pressed forward, but Colin leapt back gracefully, summoning her weapon in midair. With a swift, deadly swing of her blade, she incapacitated them with a single strike. Kshatriya and Felicia arrived moments later, observing her effortlessly handle the threat. Felicia smirked, just as I thought. Kshatriya's eyes gleamed with admiration, reassured that Colin had the situation fully under control. Colin noticed Kshatriya and asked sharply, "Why are you still here? Why didn't you retreat?" He shrugged, slightly embarrassed. Well, I came to save you." Colin's eyes narrowed, a mixture of irritation and relief crossing her face. "No, I came to help, but it seems you didn't need it." Confused, she turned and suddenly froze in surprise when she saw Felicia. Overjoyed, Colin rushed forward and embraced her tightly. "Felicia, thank goodness you're safe." Felicia blushed, flustered, yet secretly touched. Kshatriya watched, chuckling softly at their obvious closeness. Before the moment could fully settle, a system screen appeared before Kshatriya, displaying a tactical map of the area. His eyes widened. "The enemy is back. We need to retreat quickly." He turned to Colin. "You go first and lead the way. We'll defend the rear." She nodded resolutely. "Yes." Elsewhere, inside a magical barrier, the green soldiers worked feverishly, symbols scattered across the ground. Kshatriya, Felicia, and Colin stepped inside, surveying the area carefully. Felicia looked around in quiet wonder. Kshatriya glanced at her. "I discovered this gate." Colin nodded proudly.
"That's right."
"He made a huge contribution to this battle," Felicia murmured under her breath, slightly astonished. "Since when did he change this much?" Just then, a familiar presence appeared. Chris. Relief and joy spread across Colin's face.
"Brother, you brought Felicia back safely," she exclaimed.
Felicia, in contrast, frowned quietly, her mood subdued as she absorbed the chaotic aftermath, a stark reminder of the battles yet to come. Chris's gaze met Felicia's, noting the sudden shift in her demeanor as she greeted him somewhat coldly. "Long time no see, Chris," she said, her voice measured. He fell silent for a brief moment, taking in her composed but distant tone. "Yes, it has been a while, Lady Felicia," he finally replied, choosing his words carefully. Later, in a dimly lit cave, 4 figures gathered, discussing the aftermath of recent battles. Chris began reporting, his voice calm but firm. "I heard that General Vandal's side was victorious as well. Yakshan seems to have fled after seeing his camp burned to the ground." Kshatriya's curiosity was piqued, and he leaned in for clarification. Colin explained, "Yakshan, that's the supreme leader of the Red-Gray tribe. Did you forget?" Felicia interjected, "So that means Yakshan has surrendered." Chris shook his head. "Not exactly. He hasn't surrendered, he merely retreated to another location. If he manages to regroup his remaining troops, the fight could continue. Tomorrow we will strike Kyom's forces, Kaitan's older brother. If he allies with Yakshan, it could be troublesome." "That's all from me. And what about you? Why were you here?" Felicia hesitated, her eyes lowering briefly. After a pause, she answered, "I was researching nearby ruins. I heard about the battle, so I was on my way to help, but I was captured." Chris's eyebrows rose in astonishment. "Is that true?" Her gaze met his, unflinching. "Why does it sound like a lie?" she asked, challenging him. He didn't reply, only studied her expression, searching for any sign of deceit. "Yes," she said finally, unwavering. Chris looked away, his tone softening. "You must be tired. Let's stop here for now. Everyone, get some rest." "Yes, sir. You've worked hard," came the acknowledgement from the soldiers. Felicia's expression remained pensive, silent, as the others tended to wounds and rested. Kshatriya, sitting in a quiet corner, pulled up his system screen, reviewing the skills he had acquired. Mana Control Level 1, Fire Arrow Level 1, Ice Arrow Level 1, and Heal Level 1. A small grin appeared on his face. "Just looking at them makes me happy, though in a fight right now I guess aura is all I can really use," he thought, marveling at his progress. Suddenly, a voice called from the entrance. "Kshatriya, can we come in for a moment?" Felicia stepped into the dim cave light. Kshatriya's eyes widened. "Sister Felicia, you've changed your clothes," he observed. But before he could process further, he noticed a purposeful intent in her movements. Felicia paused, pursed her lips, and remained silent for a long moment. Then she stepped forward, calling again, "Kshatriya." He stared blankly, unsure of what to expect, when she suddenly grabbed him with a strong force. Huh, he exclaimed in surprise. Felicia's voice softened but carried an urgent tone. "Can you take off your shirt?" Panic surged through Kshatriya as he stammered, caught completely off guard by her unexpected demand.